Hi, I'm Robin Vincent. We ended the last segment with Congressman Tom Barrett. He helped secure the release of Liu Yang, a Hmong refugee detained this year on a decades-old conviction that had been expunged by the state of Michigan, but which federal law didn't recognize. The law behind that order hasn't changed. The enforcement has. Under President Biden, the highest number of people ICE detained was nearly 40,000 people. Under President Trump's second term, detention has surged to over 65,000. The vast majority of those detainees have no criminal convictions. One of the people caught up in this shift is Ernesto Cuevas Enciso. He came to the U.S. from Mexico in 1995. Arriving as a 3-year-old with his baby sister Miriam, who was 1. Ernesto later received DACA, but lost that protection when old misdemeanors surfaced during a DACA renewal screening. Today, he has legal work authorization through another process and is pursuing a marriage-based green card. Last week, he was near a job site in Ypsilanti when an unmarked vehicle approached. He was taken into ICE custody and is incarcerated at North Lake Processing Center in Baldwin. His family and several Michigan lawmakers are urging ICE to release him on bond. His sister Miriam Stone joins me now. Miriam, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having us.
And just a note, the Metro reached out to ICE for comment about Ernesto's case. We still have not heard back. Miriam, you and Ernesto came to the United States together in 1995, as I mentioned. You were 1 and he was 3. Now, I wouldn't expect you to remember that journey itself, but what have you been told about it? And as you grew up together, how did Michigan become home for both of you?
Yeah, Ernesto and I, we came from Guadalajara in Mexico. We were brought here as children, right, to no fault of our own. We were 1 and 3, so we didn't really have a say in it, right? But my parents were looking for a better life for us and a safer community where we could live, and that is why they made the decision to come to the United States. We first came to California, and then within a few months, we ended up in Detroit. At that time and until today, it's a booming town, right, with a lot of work. And my parents were able to find employment here in construction. And so that is how we made our way to Michigan. We grew up in Southwest Detroit. That is where, our home, and we still consider it our home. It's where my brother Ernesto lives still today with his family, with his wife and his daughter Mia. But when we were 9 years old, our parents did move us to St. Clair Shores, which is a city in Macomb County. And so from the time that I was 9 and the time that my brother Ernesto was 11, we've lived in St. Clair Shores. And so we went to the elementary, middle school, and high schools there. And that's really where a lot of our memories, or most of our memories, our friendships are derived from that community.
Yeah, you've said that all of your childhood memories include Ernesto. He was always there, just 1 grade ahead of you. What did it mean to grow up essentially side by side like that?
It was amazing. I needed him. So my parents worked hard and they worked long hours and they worked every day. And so it was Ernesto and I all the time, right? Besides being at school when we could get a little break from each other. But for example, we would have to, we would walk to school, whether it was raining or snowing. And so we would have to figure out, can we carpool with one of our friends? And so either him or I would figure it out for the both of us. I was in soccer, so I had soccer practice with AYSO, and it was a few miles down. And Ernesto would not drive me, he would use his bike, and I would be on the pegs in the back, again, regardless of the weather, if it was raining or anything. And so, it's not the most fun, but we definitely have a lot of memories where, we functioned and we played and we had soccer practice. We had dance practice as well. We were both in dance together. You know, he may not have wanted to be in dance, but he was my dance partner. And so
poor Ernesto.
Poor Ernesto, you know, and he somehow was the best one on the team. And so
poor Ernesto.
Not poor Ernesto. He got a lot of attention, you know, a lot of friends that he made as well. And so and growing up as well in middle school and then in high school, you know, his senior year, he was the homecoming king. My senior year, I was on homecoming court. And so there's a tradition at South Lake High School where the previous king and queen for homecoming are able to come back and kind of give the throne to that next, you know, whoever that would be. And so even though I was not crowned homecoming queen, I still got to ride, you know, on a car with Ernesto. We have a parade in St. Clair Shores. So it's like a whole thing, right? So it's always just like, it's always me and him, you know?
Wow. So you two have a real strong bond. And from one little sister to another, there's nothing like that protective force of a big brother. Even if they're going to bully you, they're also going to protect you and not let anyone else bully you.
Exactly. And I have a lot of memories of that. Anytime I was ever bullied, sometimes by boys who like had a crush on me, maybe I didn't have a crush on them back, right? My brother and his friends would always make sure that like people kind of like, you know, left me alone and things like that.
How did DACA change things for Ernesto as a young adult? And how did losing that protection because of those old misdemeanors affect the choices he had to make afterward?
Yeah. So we had already graduated high school by the time that DACA came into effect. So we already had to face the reality of being in this country with an undocumented status, right? It's not something we wanted. It's not a situation we wanted to be in, but we were here and that's what we were faced with. So when DACA came about, it was
One thing, Miriam, can you explain for folks? I mean, before getting that status, it's pretty much like you're living in this very strange gray area. Can you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, especially as like a minor growing up in America. My brother and I, and also because we grew up where we did, we just felt like we were like everybody else, like very like American, you know, English speaking friends, just like that was our environment. And so DACA was like a big change for us. We would be able to actually have a driver's license, whereas before in that gray area, we didn't. So there was always this risk, right, that we were doing something wrong. And it was like just in your physical presence in America, like that shouldn't be. And there were like laws and people who like didn't want you here. And that's a very like dark realization to like hold because, you know, we were brought here as children and this is the only country that we know. All of our memories growing up have been here. So it's a matrix that you feel like stuck in and you don't really know what's like right or wrong, right? Like, do you leave and leave everyone behind? Go back to a place that you absolutely don't know, that you more than likely won't thrive in because of the language barriers, the cultures, and the customs. And it's a very dark place.
Yeah. I mean, and then to get DACA, that opens so many doors and allows you to step out of that darker gray area and into a much lighter one. As adults, what kind of life was Ernesto building as a husband, a father, a construction worker? How did he talk about the future he wants for his daughter?
Yeah, honestly, him marrying Andrea, and obviously it's just like, hey, you're lucky that she happens to be a U.S.-born citizen, right? So there is now this pathway to legal residency here in the United States. That obviously wasn't a factor in him like dating her or anything like that. They met through a mutual friend. They went on a blind date, and then they really hit it off. They have a lot of things in common. They love to ski, snowboard, go up north. You know, that's just, they have a lot in common. And so, what was your question?
Oh, I'm just wondering about, you know, what Ernesto wanted for the future, for his daughter and the life that he was building.
Yeah. And so obviously at some point after, they were dating for a few years, they decided to get married and start their life. So they wanted to have a family, right? Similar to I was also engaged. And I wanted to have kids. Ernesto wanted, and Andrea, I consider them my best friends. They also wanted that for their future. And we were hopeful that our kids could grow up. And so we both actually have 1-year-old daughters now. And Ernesto was just hoping that through this paperwork finalizing and hopefully soon that it would open up doors for him to get better opportunities in employment. So obviously he's in construction, but could he look at other skilled trades that could also afford him a better living with his wife and his daughter? And they were thinking about buying a house, in the near future because of that opportunity. And so that's all that they were looking forward to.
Opening more doors, trying to step more into the light. Before we get into the arrest and what that has been like for you and your family, I want to think just for one more moment about your childhood that you shared with Ernesto, the schools, the milestones, the routines. What did you believe this country promised someone like Ernesto?
As an undocumented person, honestly, it's in question, right? Because you're constantly reminded, and especially with what's on the news and especially lately, it's very bleak of the opportunities and any promises that you could really have or continue to call this place home. So unfortunately, that is a part of the reality. At the same time, if you kind of take that out of the equation, this place is a place where my parents were able to, build their own business. They are in real estate, which status has nothing to do with it. They're able to buy homes, flip them with their own labor. And so they definitely taught us and have given us that example of the opportunity that you can have in this country to really be able to feed your family, make sure they have a roof over their head, make sure your bills are paid, and you have a safe environment overall where you can grow in and your kids can grow in. And so when you pull status away and you just believe in the dream of America, that's what the dream is.
This is The Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. My guest is Miriam Stone, sister of Ernesto Cuevas Enciso. He's a former DACA recipient in ICE custody. We're talking about their shared childhood in Michigan and the identity Ernesto has built here. I do want to turn now to December 6th. That's when Ernesto was arrested by ICE officers. I'm wondering what you've learned about how Ernesto and the other construction worker were approached by that unmarked vehicle and taken into custody.
Yeah, so Ernesto we have been able to speak to him from the detention center over the phone, and he has described what it was like. He lives in Southwest Detroit, and so that's where their journey started. My brother has a diesel 350 pickup truck and an enclosed trailer. And so, they packed up everything that they needed, all the materials and tools, and they were on their way from Southwest Detroit towards Ypsilanti. When they made it to Ypsilanti, they ended up on an industrial road, which is near their work site. That's their work site. It is off of that street. And so on that street is where 2 Jeeps that are unmarked approached them. One of the Jeeps parked in front of the truck, and the other Jeep parked in front or behind the enclosed trailer. And then 2 individuals came out of each of the Jeeps. They did have vests that said ICE. And so all of the individuals approached the truck, and then my brother was the driver, and there was a passenger, a coworker as well with him. And so they, asked them for their documents. My brother had his driver's license. He had his work authorization card with him. He had left his Social Security card at home, and so he presented that. They asked them questions. At the end of the day, they end up arresting the both of them, so detaining them with handcuffs, putting them in the back of the car. They were actually kind enough to take them that last block so that they can drop off the keys at their workplace and let one of the employees know, whoever was there outside. And so that is actually, they communicated with us, Andrea, our family, of what had happened, right? And so also on the Apple iPhone, we all have iPhones so we can see where we are.
Yeah.
I'm constantly, just by the nature of the climate of things right now. I'm always refreshing it. I see that my brother is at the federal building on Michigan in Detroit. And as soon as that happened, I connect with Andrea, his wife, and just simply ask, like, is my brother okay? And she says no. And so, like, that's where it begins, right? Like, now we're tracking where they're going. They were in that federal building with ICE doing intake for a few hours. And then that same day on Saturday, they were transported over to Baldwin. They were held in Baldwin in a temporary area, so not with the masses, essentially. And so in that area, they did have they didn't have full access to a lot of the things that they do now. So, for example, there's like a commissary, so you can ask for, like, you can buy extra food or things to help you keep warm. Also, water was limited. They were told to take a cup, go to the bathroom sink, fill it up, put it in their microwave and heat it up in an attempt to, like, boil the water. So they didn't have, like, water fountains or, like, drinkable, like, normal water. It
wasn't potable water?
No. And so that was their way to, like, drink water. My brother was very creative, and he had been given 3 water bottles before he made it there. At the ICE, the federal building. He had crushed them and put him in his bag. And so once he got there, he got the idea of, like, expanding it, throwing, like, ice cubes that they have access to, and letting the water melt in an attempt to drink water that was, like, cleaner.
So I should note that North Lake Processing Center is now one of the biggest immigration detention facilities in the Midwest. It recently reopened under the Trump administration. I'm wondering, Miriam, what have you heard about the conditions now? Does Ernesto have access to potable water, for example? Are things improved?
So he does have access. They have water fountains. And so I guess to start off, that processing center, they have everybody there separated and divided into smaller groups, and there are walls. And so my brother was moved from one area to another, and he did mention that first area had more resources than the second, but he does have access to be able to shower and have water fountains and be able to communicate with us. It's just more limited than in the other area.
The Metro contacted ICE, and we asked them why they detained Ernesto, given his legal work authorization and his pending marriage-based green card. Have you gotten a response from ICE as to why they took him into custody?
We have not yet. Senator Stephanie Chang, among other politicians, did submit a letter of support to the Detroit director for ICE via email. We have not received anything. It is typical for them to not respond. And so I'm not really sure what else we can do besides all the advocacy effort, hoping that they will respond to somebody. But so far, they have been mute.
National data show that most people ICE is now detaining have no criminal convictions. So given Ernesto's work authorization, his pending green card case, and only those old misdemeanors from more than a decade ago, why do you think he was targeted now?
I think that I don't want it to be reality, but I think that there, in the last couple of months, it's kind of avoidable to understand that maybe you are being targeted based off of your ethnicity and your presence, the fact that you look like a Latino or Mexican. Even I, as a citizen, to be honest, worry. My husband worries. His family worries. Even that I would be detained and questioned. And so it's a really scary time.
For you, someone who's shared almost every chapter of your life with your brother, how has this changed your understanding of what the immigration system actually does?
You thought that, I can accept that at some point we were completely undocumented without DACA. And even with DACA, you still technically don't have legal presence, right? It's just some level of what seems to be a little bit of protection. You would think that once you start doing things right and you are in process with USCIS, with his U.S. citizen wife, that you have, let them know your entire history. I mean, you have to let them know where you've lived, where you work. Every time you move, you have to let them know. They have your email. They have your phone number. They have all the information about you.
Close tabs.
Exactly. They know everything about you. So you're exposed, and you have willingly, right, filed this paperwork and let them know they can still track you, right? And you are willing to give them that information every time. And so you think that once you're in this legal process, which is the process you're supposed to be in to gain some legal status and correct what was, at some point wrong, you would think you would be okay, that they would maybe be, have some sort of approval. And unfortunately, the case is Ernesto is detained. And so it's just kind of like a big, huge question mark. And that's what we've heard a lot from family members and other people. It's just like, if you are doing it even completely right, you're still at risk of being detained. And now you see yourself in this legal battle and, time away from your family. And if you're the main breadwinner like Ernesto, well, now what does your family do? And so it does have a really big impact.
Yeah, it shows us the ways that politics is so deeply embedded into daily life, and immigration itself is deeply political. I'm wondering if this experience has changed your own views about what elected officials should be doing or about where the system is failing families.
Honestly, I think that people like Senator Stephanie Chang, Congresswoman Tlaib, everyone else who has signed on to the letter, I think that they are great examples of our representatives. They really are representing the people. They really are keeping tabs on what is happening in our communities. And I do believe that is the reason why, obviously with their blessing and their support after reviewing Ernesto's case, we have been able to garner some attention. Whereas, if without them, like, where would we actually even be?
You're talking about the letter that Senator Stephanie Chang, who we'll hear from in a few minutes, actually, that she wrote and that was signed by people like Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib.
Exactly. That letter that was sent to ICE.
If you could address ICE leadership directly, what would you want them to reconsider about detaining someone like Ernesto, someone who arrived here as a toddler and has lived his entire life in Michigan?
First, I would say that I understand that there is law and order in this country. Completely understand that. Will not fight that at all. And at the same time, if you are a person who is doing things right based on what they have asked you to do, I do believe that it is a question of moral. And I would like for them to lean in to their own morality. And I also pray for them to do that. And I hope that they can find fairness and act from that.
Miriam, finally, when you imagine Ernesto coming home, even while the legal process continues, what would justice and healing look like for you and your family? I mean, I see you brought a photo album here. I think it's pretty evident how close you and Ernesto are. You even keep tabs on his locations on your phone.
Yes, still, even though he's in the detention center, I'm hopeful that it'll refresh and he's somehow home. I just keep imagining seeing him hug his wife and his daughter first and foremost. I am doing this for them, speaking up, connecting, doing advocacy. And so first and foremost, I do see myself as a bystander watching him be reunited with his wife and his 1-year-old daughter. But I am so excited to give him a hug one day. I know there will be tears. And he has shared with us that he has had dreams where he's reaching out to his daughter and he can see his daughter in his dream. And so honestly, knowing that and hearing that from him is my motivation to work hard, to do anything that I can in my power, to advocate and get the community together and build awareness so that we can bring him home soon.
Miriam Stone, sister of Ernesto Cuevas Enciso. Ernesto remains in ICE custody at the North Lake Processing Center in Baldwin, Michigan, ahead of a December 17th hearing. His case is one of many unfolding in Michigan this year as federal immigration enforcement intensifies and families navigate a system that often detains people with long-standing roots and active legal cases. Miriam, thank you so much for joining me on the Metro.
Thank you.
When we come back, we'll widen the lens. We'll talk with Christine Suave of the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center about the legal pathways available to someone in Ernesto's position. Then we'll hear from State Senator Stephanie Chang, who's among the lawmakers urging ICE to release him. Stay with us.